up and welcome, I'm the one and only West Coast King, and welcome back to Major League 90, where we are talking Major League Soccer, and some big things went down this weekend that I want to talk about. The first one was the game Sunday night, Orlando facing off against the reigning MLS Cup champions, the Portland Timbers, down in Orlando, and what a game that was. Orlando, the home team, comes away with a huge 4-1 victory in a game where Portland looked completely overpowered and outmatched. I mean, it was just a world-class performance by Orlando. It was very, very scary. If you're any other team watching that take place, they were relentless in their attack. It was 3-0 late in the game. They kept attacking, eventually putting home a fourth on a penalty before Orlando got a late consolation goal. I mean, it was a very, very impressive performance, a complete performance by Orlando, and a statement win for them. Up until this point, they hadn't had Kaká. This was Kaká's first game back this season, and he stepped right in and had a huge role in that game, scoring twice, getting an assist before Kevin Molino put home the final goal with a penalty that he earned, and that was an emotional goal as well. I mean, Molino was a guy who missed most, I think, all of last season with an injury, and he was looking for his first MLS goal. He earns that penalty, and before there's even a discussion on who's going to take it, Kaká, the captain, hands him the ball. He puts it on the spot, and Molino powers it past the keeper for his first MLS goal. I mean, it was an emotional scene. I mean, it just kind of put a cap on the whole night, just kind of symbolized what that was. That was kind of the coming out party for both Molino and for Orlando for the MLS. I mean, it was a very, very impressive win. And now, I know we're only 4 games into the season now. It's too early to jump to conclusions, but in an Eastern Conference where no one is really separating themselves, is it too early to say Orlando is a legitimate contender? I mean, they're in first place right now. They're 2 points clear of second place Montreal, Philadelphia, and New England. All of them are on 6 points. Orlando is on 8. Nobody's separating themselves, though, in the Eastern Conference. None of the big teams are stepping up. Columbus, who I picked to finish first, is in last place still on 2 points. New York Red Bulls, who finished last year in first place in the East, won the Supporter Shield. They're in 8th. They're not having a good season right now either. They're struggling mightily. Toronto, who I really like this season coming in, they're in 7th. I mean, nobody's stepping up in the Eastern Conference. I know it's early, like I said, but I would say Orlando's a legitimate contender. I'm not saying they're going to go on to win the MLS Cup. I'm not going to even say they're going to finish first in the Eastern Conference, but I think they're a team that's going to give a lot of teams a lot of trouble come playoff time in the East. Switching sides and looking at the Western Conference now, FC Dallas finally finds themselves in first place after a horrific start to the season, dropping a 5-0 result in the Texas Derby to Houston to start the season. They were in a game where they absolutely looked awful. I mean, there are no words to describe how bad they were in that first game. In the 4 games since, they've absolutely turned it around. They won 3 in a row, finally dropping their first points since that loss in a 1-1 draw to Columbus at home at Frisco, a game I expected them fully to win with as bad as Columbus is playing right now. Still, they managed to pick up that all-important point, and that puts them 1 point clear now in the Western Conference. I said they were going to finish first in the West. I picked them to win the Supporter Shield. I still think they're the best team in the MLS, and now they're starting to finally show it, which should make a lot of teams very, very nervous, not only in the Western Conference, but anyone they play. They are a very dangerous team, especially right now. They're very, very hot. On the flip side, down at the bottom of the Western Conference still is Seattle, but they won. They finally won. They came into this weekend the only team still on 0 points. They finally got a win at home, a 1-0 victory over Montreal. Probably wasn't their best performance of the season, but they finally got those points that they deserved. I mean, I've said all season that they've been the most unlucky team in the MLS, and I don't think there's any debate about that. They've been very, very unlucky with some of the calls that have gone against them, and we'll get to that in a moment. But they finally turned it around, put it together, and scrapped out a 1-0 victory. Wasn't impressive, wasn't dominant in any fashion, but they got the win, and that's all that matters. So I mentioned some of those bad calls that have gone against Seattle, and one game in particular stands out. It's the reason I didn't do an ML90 last week. I avoided doing this because I knew it was going to boil down and I was going to have to talk about this, and I was heated last week. I didn't want to talk about it. I knew it was just going to blow up, but now it seemed to rear its head again, and that is the fact that one referee is starting to really cost some teams some points here, and that is Mark Geiger. Last game for Seattle, a 2-1 loss at home to Vancouver in a game where Vancouver earned 2 penalties, One of them was questionable at best. The other one was an absolute, I'm not going to swear, was very, very bad. It was a very poor call, I would have to say, and I think anyone would agree with you. Even the Vancouver announcers that I had to listen to was saying like, ooh, that might not have been a penalty. No, it was not a penalty. It was an absolutely horrific call. But damn, Mark Geiger, you're back at it again with the bad calls this week, costing New York Red Bulls, I would say, at least a point. Though, you know, the whole situation where the New York Red Bulls had a player down, Kamar Lawrence was down, the referee decided not to stop it. He has that choice. He has the choice not to stop the play if he doesn't feel like it needs to be stopped. He didn't. New England played on. They scored the only goal of the game. Honestly, I don't have a problem with that. It was the red card later that was ridiculous that I had a problem with, and Mark Geiger was emphatic about it, showing the red card to, I think it was Felipe, sending him off for a tackle that looked just like a normal tackle. I don't understand where the red card came from. Yeah, his foot was a little high, caught the player on the shin, but a straight red card? Like, what? How is that a red card? It didn't make any sense. So we're going to start a little segment on this series called the Geiger counter. You see what I did there? It's pretty clever, right? The Geiger counter, where we're going to add teams to the list of teams that they don't want to see Mark Geiger anymore. They're praying that Mark Geiger does not show up at their stadium to referee their game. I think we can add Seattle to that list, and now New York is going to be on that list. Coincidentally, New England was the team this week that benefited from it, but I think New England's probably already on the list from last season in the playoffs where Mark Geiger did not give a penalty, and it resulted in Jermaine Jones losing his freaking mind, touching Mark Geiger and getting his 6-game suspension. Yes, it was Mark Geiger that was involved in that whole fiasco as well. I mean, for a guy that is a World Cup experienced referee, he's been awful. He's been absolutely shambolic. I don't even want to see a game where he's refereeing anymore. I mean, he's single-handedly costing teams points. And at some point, I think the league has got to take a look at this and just recognize that he's been awful. And I don't even know what they can do, but please do something. I beg you. Just stop him from refereeing for just a little bit. Maybe send him on a vacation to a nice sunny beach somewhere. Let him get his mind right. Don't allow him on a pitch for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Just allow the MLS to have a Geiger-free week at least. And just let him get his head right. Because, to be honest, he has no place anywhere near a pitch at this point. So that is really all I've got to talk about today. As always, leave me your thoughts in the comments below, whether it's on the Mark Geiger situation or whether it's the situation going on where a lot of teams seem to be struggling in the MLS right now. Some of the better teams that we thought were going to be good, really having slow starts to the season. Let me know how your team is doing and if you think that they're going to turn their season around if they are one of those struggling teams. But that is going to do it for this one. If you did enjoy it, make sure to let me know by leaving a like below. Subscribe if you're new, and I will see you when we come back with some more Major League 90. See ya.